What's up, and welcome back to another episode of Insights, the podcast built to help you with your recruitment, digital marketing. I'm joined this week by Chief Strategy Officer Brad Smith. Brad, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm glad to be back. A return visitor. I liked it.
Yeah, between you, David, I would say Matt Lozar in the past, Rachel Reed's been on quite a bit. You're definitely a frequent flyer at this point.
I love it. Happy to be.
How's everything been? What are you hearing in the staffing landscape right now? Are things looking up?
Things are good. I say that with some caution, right? Because we don't exactly know what's going to happen day to day here, especially with everything going on in the world. But I'm hearing good signs. I'm seeing some good financial numbers out of some of the larger international players. I'm seeing some growth metrics in several individual key verticals or silos. So I'm optimistic, but still cautious.
Yeah. I told a client yesterday that people have been happier on calls lately. And that's been really nice. And I know it was kind of funny. I've known this guy for a really long time, and I could be kind of candid with him. But he asked me how business is and how my calls have been going lately, just to get a pulse on the industry. And I said it hasn't been all doom and gloom in the last month and a half. That people have been happier on calls, and I think that's a pretty good pulse check on where the industry is headed. If people are happy on calls, it's probably a pretty good indicator that things are looking up.
A nice leading indicator. I like it. I mean, not the most scientific, right? But if we can judge their happiness, how much they're smiling, their optimism, I think that's a good sign, because when you're not getting hung up on constantly, when people aren't just telling you, no, I don't have a need, when they're actually open to conversations, I think that is a great leading indicator, and that leads to more smiles on our calls. I know for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Brad, I want to talk today about content marketing. The game has completely changed. With AI, with artificial intelligence, with Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, insert LLM here, I feel like it has never been easier yet harder to create great content. Mm-hmm. Where do you see content going as of July 2026?
Interesting. So July 2026, where do I see it going? I see it being more customized, more personalized, more individualized. And I think that in essence can be hard to do effectively unless you're using the tools effectively. So, kind of set the stage here. If we look back at, say, even the last year or two, I think content marketing, even within the last year or two, was more generalized. So maybe you were talking about your business, or maybe you were talking about the solutions that you offer or provide. And I think with more and more organizations using AI, I think that's kind of watered down those messages a little bit. So it's made getting content out a little easier, but it's also made it not as unique, not as general, too general, not as specific. So I think we're seeing more general content that answers general queries. And where I see it going is the companies that are really going to win and do well and differentiate themselves are the ones that are taking it to that next level, that aren't just using basic AI general output that talks about a high level theme, but are getting very specific to their organization, specific to their ICPs, their clients, their targets, and then getting very specific to unique personas. So individual buyers or job titles that you're going after, they all have unique needs. And I think content marketing is going to have to become even more unique to capture somebody's attention.
And I think we know that's true in outside of staffing, right? Like I don't necessarily care about the score of the Bills game, right? And I know we're talking in the middle of summer about football, but I don't care about the score of the Bills game. I care about what the local beat reporter has to say about the Bills game. I care about this minute individual talking about having a personal opinion on it. He knows his target audience better than anybody else because all he does is write for the Bills, and I care about what he has to say. And I agree with you in the sense of I think AI enabled us to be generalized content for such a long period of time that it got sloppy in the sense of no one wants to read sort of canned content. They want it to be specialized and feel like it's written specifically for me.
100%, Brad. And that's, I think, really how you break through all the clutter. So I think with AI, we're seeing more and more content hit, but it needs to be specialized. I mean, I know that you're passionate about running and
Hmm.
marathons.
Yeah.
Okay. You're probably not going to read a post that's just a general post about running a 5K.
Right.
You're beyond that. You need a post maybe on micros, macros, and at what point do you need to start training? At what point do you need to mix this into your diet? At what point during your training regimen do you need to do X, Y, or Z? At what point do you need to change your shoes, your sneakers, and they break down? And how do you rotate your footwear? And what insoles should you use? And what socks are better wicking than others? Like, you're not going to read generalized running content. You're going to read something that is very unique and specific to your challenges. And I think as marketers and as companies and as business owners, we need to get intimate with what our target buyers' challenges really are. And that's where I think you get customized content that's relevant to the audience and helps you stand out, not just basic, hey, lace up the shoes and go for a little jog.
Yeah. What does that look like in staffing? Because I think that's the perfect parallel. So what does that look like for the staffing owner who is now on the same wave as us?
Well, I think it starts by identifying your ICPs, your ideal client profiles, right?
Mhm.
So, are you a specialist in healthcare staffing? Do you do logistics support? Are you just placing general picker packers and talking to a warehouse manager? You need to really know what you're great at and what you want to be great at, and then define that ICP as detailed as you can. So, what are the big industry challenges? What are the headwinds they're facing? What's the outlook look like? What pains or challenges are they expected to have in the next 6 months? But on the other side, what are their biggest opportunities in the next 6 months? What do projections look like? What does data tell us? And what can we learn from that data? And then I think once you identify those ICPs, then we need to dig into the specific buyers. So in staffing, and I'm hearing this more and more, there's no longer one key decision maker. There's 4 or 5 decision makers that are involved in the process. Might be the COO, might be the CFO, might be HR or talent acquisition, might be risk, and it might be the line manager. Each one of those people has a different KPI that they're trying to hit, right? So each one has a unique goal that they have. And as businesses, we can't just talk about overall how great we are or how we deliver service. We need to talk about how we help that individual person hit their individual KPI and look like a hero in their organization. That's where we really win. So we need to do a lot more background research work, identifying our ideal client profiles, identifying the personas or job titles that we're selling into, know what they're all about, know what they're trying to accomplish, and then craft and adjust our content for each one of them. So it's no longer, again, about just a basic running article. It's getting very detailed and specific about what you can actually do to help solve a very specific and unique problem that they face in their job every day.
When you start to get more specific in answering those questions, how does that then play into organic search, LLM responses? I would suspect the more granular you get in answering really difficult questions, what is the perfect insole for a guy who has, a step on the outside of his foot or this kind of pace, this kind of cadence, that long tail keyword search, as we would articulate it in marketing terms, I would assume the more content you have built around that, the better.
Yes, to an extent, and you've got to
Okay.
balance that too, right? So
Sure.
your search volume for those very specific long tail keywords is much lower, but oftentimes the buying intent is much higher. So we need to look at the data and identify those longer tail searches or terms that have high relevancy, that have a decent amount of traffic, and that have an opportunity for us to rank well. Because if we can own those terms, that buyer intent is so high that in almost all cases, that's going to generate interest and generate hopefully a further conversation or an opportunity for a further conversation. So that's one side of things. So, and I'll use another analogy, Brad. I know you've got 2 young kids at home. If you're looking for a restaurant to go out to with your wife and the kids on a Friday or Saturday night, you're not just looking at restaurants near me. You're
No.
looking at kid-friendly restaurants near me with outdoor activities that get the food out quickly because you're on limited time,
Yes.
that have probably chicken nuggets and maybe some mac and cheese and some applesauce.
Are you speaking from experience? It seems
I
like you
am
know what you're
speaking
talking
from
about.
experience. Yep, because I've gone through this myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I share that because people's searches now, because of AI and the large language models, are very specific. So if we can write that very specific content, we have the opportunity to rank high in AI overviews in the large language models and own the answer. So if we can own the answer, we're going to own that visibility. We're going to earn that opportunity for business, and we're going to be in a much better position than just a generalist that's talking about, basic running.
How do we get there? So if you're the owner listening right now and you're thinking, okay, I'm with you guys. I might even understand and thoroughly get the running analogy or the long tail search about restaurants, things like that. I get it. I'm a 3-person shop though, and there's just no chance that I'm getting there. How do we get the average listener there?
Let's use that technology to our advantage. So let's use the platforms and the resources for us. So no longer do we need to do an extensive market research project and spend 6 months looking at your ICPs and your personas. Let's leverage AI to create those, I like to call them knowledge blocks. So a knowledge block about our ICPs, a knowledge block about the personas that we're looking to target. Let's figure out what keeps them up at night, what makes them tick, what their interests are. And then from there, we're using research and technology to identify what topics we should write. And Brad, not to make this just a plug, but we've done this and we've seen this be extremely successful. Number one, for our own marketing, but also for our clients' marketing over the last 6 months to a year. So we invested a lot in building out RogIQ, our new AI assisted marketing platform. And all that work is inherently done. So we go in and we identify the ICP, we identify the persona, we do all the content and planning and strategy and creative and writing. So it helps that 3-person shop get access to all the data they need and leverage a bunch of different large language models to produce not just general content, but highly specific content. And then we build that into a consistent cadence. So every week, you're writing to each one of those personas. You're producing thought leadership content. You're getting content that you can fuel your individual LinkedIn or sales outreach with. You're getting content that you can use to fuel automation campaigns to make sure that you're in front of people when their staffing need hits. You're getting content and thought leadership that your individual salesperson can use as a follow-up or as an open the door piece of content to actually have a better conversation than just, hey, are you looking to hire?
Hey, it's Brad taking a quick break to tell you about an offer for the first 7 people who find me on LinkedIn. We recently launched RogIQ, the AI marketing assistant built for staffing firms. I'm so excited about what this tool can do. I convinced our co-CEO to let me give away some free trials. So the first 7 people who act on this will get 1 free month of content. That's blogs, social posts, and SEO pages completely free. All custom to your company and target audience. Here's what you do. Open LinkedIn right now, find me, Brad Bialy, and send me one word, RogIQ, RogIQ. The first 7 people get access to 1 month of marketing content, no catch. Again, open LinkedIn right now, find me, Brad Bialy, and send me one word, RogIQ. That's it. All right, let's get back to the show. Brad, I think, for me, when I got started with AI content, I hated it. And you and I went back and forth about this multiple times. And I know you're laughing now because I have a hard stance on, you're on the show here. I've put 7 years of love into this show. I love being personal with content that I create. I can tell you in the last 6 to 8 months, my thought process on AI supported content has completely changed. And you've seen that too. And we've talked about that extensively. It's because of the ability to have AI run alongside me and not just offload it completely.
Mm-hmm.
It's AI first, but it's not AI last in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's where RogIQ, the work that our team has put together, really where we're taking AI content and where we're educating the industry on AI content is changing. It's not just write me an article on resume advice or how can I ace my next interview. No one wants to read that article, but it's looking so specific at an ICP and saying, okay, what would Brad, the hiring manager in Buffalo, New York, really care about? Let's do all of this extensive research to find those pain points and write the perfect article for that person because there are 36 other people like Brad who would love to read this article, maybe more. And the ability to have that assistant, we couldn't create that content a year ago. We couldn't create that content maybe 6 months ago. It would have taken so much market research and surveys and just interviews to get that level of information that we have now at our disposal to create exceptional content.
Yeah. And Brad, if you think about it, the best authors in the world are identifying who they're writing for, right? Then they're looking at brainstorming topics and what would be engaging and what would be interesting. Then they're probably putting together outlines. Then they're
Mhm.
putting together summaries and, intros to chapters. Then they're going through and probably bouncing that off a group of peers, getting thoughts, getting feedback. Then they're refining their ideas. Then they're writing a first draft. Then it's going to an editor. The editor's giving comments and feedback. They're probably running that by another peer network and getting comments and feedback. They're doing rounds and rounds and rounds of revisions. Then they're going through and doing proofreading, probably final editorial check. They're doing fact checking. They're doing and embedding research into that. And then they're finally getting to an end piece. And that's what makes it great, right? All of those steps. Over the last, let's say, 2 years, AI has enabled people to pump out content, but it did not have that level of checks, audits, editing, everything else. Might have had proofreading, right?
Yeah.
And some
Yeah.
basic brainstorming, but it didn't have all of those different things. Fast forward to today, and if you're using like ChatGPT, Claude, any of the large language models to write, out of the box, it doesn't have that either, right? It has just that first phase, like, hey, I've got an idea, write this content. So it's coming out general. I think where the companies that are winning at creating really engaging content are still following through all those steps that I just outlined, but leveraging different AI models, different LLMs to do different components of each one of those, of the ideation, of the brainstorming, of the editing, of the feedback channel, and creating these loops so that we can make sure that our content is unique, it hits the mark, it's differentiated. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about creating content through AI, I don't think it's good enough to rely on one large language model or not create a rubric for what great content is or not think about that editorial process to get to a good final point. So just putting in a topic and accepting the output, it's going to lump you in with everybody else. We need that process, that creative process. And it doesn't have to be an individual. It can be a large language model or an AI that we're bouncing that process off of. But if you can do that consistently, you're going to end up with way better content that's way more personalized that really hits the mark. And, when we first started, I know the feedback because you and I had some deep discussions about this. And your feedback was dead on. It was too general. It was too content wasn't specific enough. But I said, you know what? We're going to work through this and it's going to get to a point where we're able to produce this. And I'm very confident right now in the level of output that we're able to produce and still go through that editorial process, but now do it at scale because we've done all of the research, work, development, built out the tech in order to do that and are ending up with some really great output.
I'm excited about it too. And it's interesting. I was talking to a client a week or so ago, and I was walking through what RogIQ does specifically, and she made a comment that said, "So you're basically treating LLMs as peer review. They're peer reviewing each other." I said, "That's exactly what they're doing. One might write it, one will review it, one will put it through a checklist, a scoring rubric, and it's going to bounce around until it gets to a point where it itself loves the content so that I could then love the content.
Yes.
And Brad, you might be able to articulate a little bit better what it's actually going through. I think you just did a little bit in terms of the editorial process, but we're using AI to operate as a peer review. So it's not just write me interview tips or best practices. It's so much more than that. And that's the level of content that I think people need and deserve. They want those think pieces that are not just, well, how can I run today? It's how can I go out and run 400-meter repeats at X level of intensity for this long? When do I need to gel? When do I need to drink water? And getting that specific information that matters to them.
You've got it. Yeah. It's way more specific, and you're going through that deep dive editorial process at scale quickly when done the right way. And the output is so much better than just a general prompt to say, write me an article on X, Y, or Z.
Yeah. When you touched on ICPs, the ideal customer profile, and I do want to talk specifically about RogIQ because I think this is maybe one of the most important parts of the software is knowing who we're talking to first. How is RogIQ understanding ICPs? How is it understanding target audience? Because as we've articulated in the past, if you don't have your target audience, the content doesn't matter, right? The people that read Better Homes and Gardens is very different than the people that read Rolling Stone, is very different than people that read Inked Magazine. They know their target audience and the content aligns with that audience. So what is our software doing specifically to understand target audience, laser in that ICP and build that profile?
But right off the bat, we're doing deep research into the organization. So it's going through and looking at background of the organization, the history, the types of clients, the industries, the skill positions, your open job postings, and what you filled in the past. It's looking at case studies. It's looking at reviews. It's looking at who you've done business with in the past. And it's doing deep dives into all of those different facets to create who the ideal client profile really is. And again, it's based on history and real world data. From there, we are then generating and creating those ICPs. Now, to your point earlier, I think that the best outputs do require some human intervention and engagement. So, you as the business owner or as a leader in the organization know very well what's right and what isn't. So, we have a human feedback loop in place. So if there's something slightly off, maybe the size of the organization you're targeting, or a job title, or a industry vertical is missing that you have a specialty in, you can easily provide that feedback and then rerun the research or augment and update the research to key in on that exact ideal client profile. And then once in a while, you'll find something surprising. Like we did this for an organization and they looked at it and said, well, this is weird because it's saying that one of our ICPs is property management companies. Where is it getting that from? I said, well, it's getting that from somewhere. So they're a bullhorn shop. They ran financials over the last 2 years out of Bullhorn. Lo and behold, they found that property management companies was one of their fastest growing segments, and the AI picked up on that because of the types of job openings and positions. So it wasn't their core, but it was probably like their fourth or fifth highest revenue generator. They didn't 100% realize that. The system
Yeah.
did, and the system created a unique ICP just for that vertical. Then from there, with each ICP, it creates 3 or 4 personas right off the bat. So it says, all right, if you're selling into this organization, who are you generally selling into? And then it details their pain points, their goals, their objectives. And then the content ideation really comes from all of that deep research. So then it's writing content that is very specific and unique to that industry and those buyers.
Yeah. And that's what I think is a huge unlock too. So it's not just creating content for Brad's staffing firm, it's looking at each ICP or individual within that bucket of target audience and saying, okay, let's write content specifically for Brad, the decision maker.
Mhm.
And it's painting such a good lens at what that person cares about and what keeps them up at night.
100%. Yeah. It's content that's way more engaging, way more personal, way more specific. And then when people are doing those very specific searches, looking for a staffing company that focuses in logistics and distribution for a small subset of, a unique industry, you're way more likely to show up in AI overviews and recommendations, in search, and it gives you a leg up on the competition.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on this. I know we got a few more minutes here, just based on typical show length for insights. Google switching to AI overviews, people using more AI overviews and AI search. I want to tee this up the right way, and maybe I'll just ask it this way: does content still matter? Right? We've talked about now content for 35 minutes. We've talked about long tail, short tail. You and I live in the content space. I've had calls about this, so I want to get your take on this. Google is shifting to this AI first sort of overview where you don't get as many links back to content. LLM search, it's difficult to get that click back to that link back as well. Does content still matter in a world that's moving more towards AI driven responses?
Yeah. So with AI driven responses, oftentimes you're getting zero click results,
Mhm.
which means, to your point, you're no longer getting someone to click on an article, get them over to your site as their first instinct. Okay. Because that answer is being served up in Google responses. Now, you could look at that on the surface and say, yeah, that's a bad thing. Content no longer matters. I would argue that it matters even more than it did before because you need to own the answer. Okay. When someone is searching for something very specific, you need to own that answer. The only way you can own that answer is by producing good quality content, by having topical authority in the areas that you want to own, and consistently producing highly valued, reputable content that isn't biased, but provides a great answer to that query. If you can do that, then you're going to own the AI overviews. And the trust that people put in those AI overviews is almost unparalleled. So if you can win that AI overview, you're going to win that visibility. You're going to be on the short list of people that they want to work with, and you're going to see leads increase. You might, in the short term, see website traffic decline or rankings decline. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And we have to, as marketers and business owners, be okay with that. But if we get more direct calls from people looking for very specific things that we're really good at, that's going to outweigh just a click that gets to your website and somebody scans an article. So
Yeah.
while clicks may be down, clicks to our website may be down, might get us thinking that content no longer matters. The content matters because we need it to get into those AI overviews and we need it to win. So I think it's a very winning strategy. I don't think content has been, I think content's more important than it's ever been, but it comes down to the type of content and the specificity of that content. General's no longer
Yeah.
going to win.
I do too. And I'm sitting here thinking that it's almost reverting back, almost like the sales process, where sales shouldn't be a transactional operation. It should be relationship driven in the first place, too. We've treated content for the longest time transactionally. I present a blog article. I am betting on you clicking it. That's a transaction to come to my website. Instead, it's reverting back to how can I have the best possible answer to this question to improve your life, improve your day to day, so that I can form a relationship with you, so that you see me as a premier provider of X service because of the information that I've given you. It's relationship first, and that's how the industry always should have been. We sort of just got away from ourselves a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. But I think now with the tools available, with the technology available, we can scale that approach where we couldn't do that before. So we had to rely on more generalized content. Now we don't have to. And we have so much power to be consultative, to build that relationship, to build trust, and to add value.
Anything else you wish we talked about regarding RogIQ before I get to the exclusive offer for this episode?
Boy, I will tell you that I use RogIQ every single day for developing my own content, whether I have an idea that I want to start with or whether I've got some brain fog and can't think of what I'm going to tackle next. I use it consistently. And then for my own brand, I have a playful brand and I like to have a little bit of fun and the creative coming out of the platform with a little fine tuning and adjustments in my initial overview of the company has been absolutely fantastic. It's creating things that I wouldn't have thought to create before. It's looking at like that example I shared of property management. It's looking at the fine details of the data that I as a human may have missed And it gets me to question some things sometimes where I look at it and say, boy, why are we covering that? And then when you really dig into it, you're like, wow, that makes a whole lot of sense. That's fantastic. And I wouldn't have thought of that before. So for me, it's empowered me to really do the work probably of 5 people that I could do before, but didn't have the time to do. And it's allowed me to focus on things that are probably more important at driving revenue than going through and proofreading something or editing something. It's already doing that for me. So it's been really a force multiplier for me, I would say.
Very good. Brad, always appreciate you coming on the show, bud.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
All right, take care.
Take care.